Women's March. It happened just the other day. The turnout was ridiculously low. At least they were expecting a lot more, but it's not surprising because of the anti-Semitism controversy. Apparently, women still showed up anyway. And there's two stories here. The first is the general controversy as listed by Vox. And then we have this New York Post story about Ocasio-Cortez attending it. Yes, look, like it or not, Ocasio-Cortez has millions of followers, and she really has come to represent the larger left, right? Or I should say this new wave of identitarian leftists or far leftists, whatever you want to call it. Now, before I read through this, I'm going to say something. Yes, I am going to cover the MAGA kids incident. You can see it right here on the screen. They say white students in MAGA gear crashed the Indigenous Peoples March and harassed participants. Fake news! Literally, it's fake news, and it's terrifying fake news. I'm in conversation with several people, some high-profile journalists, who are shocked when I actually show them the video of what happened. But I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm going to save that because I'm waiting. I'm trying to do an interview with these kids and make something larger. So that'll be at 4 p.m. So I'll have this video, and there's going to be a video at 1 p.m. Let's talk about the Women's March now. And yes, I understand, man. I have so much to say about the MAGA kids incident. I might have like a half an hour video later. But anyway, the Women's March, the leaders, they're anti-Semites. They've refused to disavow Farrakhan. And how many times have I done this video? Unsurprisingly, women still showed up even though they knew that they were marching behind anti-Semites. And I'll take the opportunity to compare and contrast the fact that there are overt anti-Semites leading this group. The women show up anyway, they don't care, but they're certainly angry because some kid stood in front of a guy who was banging a drum. It's the most insane, it's like, man, I really do feel like civil war is inevitable at this point when you see just how insane these people are, okay? Because listen, if you've got overt anti-Semites and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, okay, if you didn't know this, I believe she was the chair of the DNC. I don't know if she still is, but she is a high-profile Democrat, disavowed the Women's March. She, in no uncertain terms, she wrote an op-ed for USA Today saying disavow, disavow, disavow. They still show up. That's scary. That's scary because, you know, I made a somewhat facetious tweet where I said, is the Women's March the largest anti-Semite-led march in U.S. history? And the answer is, of course it is, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by this. The Women's March, the one in 2017 that had, 4 million women across the country marching, it's the largest protest in U.S. history. That's my understanding. Now, certainly, it is led by anti-Semites, and it is one of the largest, if not the largest protest in U.S. history. That being said, it certainly qualifies as the largest anti-Semite-led march. I didn't say everyone there was anti-Semites. I said the leaders were overt anti-Semites who have that at their core and refuse to disavow it. And a bunch of people said some really dumb things to me. They were like, a bunch of lefties were like, Charlottesville, you idiot. Oh, like Charlottesville had like a couple hundred people, right? Well, how many people were in Charlottesville on the right side? Seriously, like 500 to 1,000? If that, definitely not 1,000. I think it was like several hundred. You want to talk about a large march? Let's talk about the millions of people around the country who rose up to wave your banner that was produced by overt anti-Semites who are also homophobes. Congratulations. That's who's in front of you as you march. Now, there's some other funny bits about what happened at the Women's March. Is apparently Laura Loomer rushed the stage and started yelling something about how they don't represent Jewish people. Interestingly, in this Vox article, it says, as Women's March NYC director Agunda Okeyo addressed the crowd, which appeared to number in the hundreds, an audience member shouted, the Women's March does not represent Jewish people. The Women's March is the real Nazi party. Well, that's certainly hyperbolic, but I will say, if they want to claim that, Republicans or Trump is Hitler, I'm going to have to point to you who actually espouse anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and are, I guess you'd call them ethnicist, right? This idea that they want, identitarian is a better way to put it, I suppose. I don't want to say that they're ethno-nationalist because many of them are globalists, but they have this idea about how race should be a factor in their governmental policies. So identitarian is probably the better way to say it. You've got identitarian anti-Semites. I'm not going to call them Nazis because that's a stupid thing to do, but if there ever was a group today that was close to what the Nazis were, it's the identitarian anti-Semites. And yes, you could say on both sides, don't get me wrong, it's just the alt-right is microscopic. The alt-right, if you take every white supremacist in the country, okay, according to, I believe this is the Anti-Defamation League and the SPLC, and do a round up, guess how much you get? About 11,000. maybe 13,000. In a country of 330 million people, excluding the babies, you have maybe like 200 like sentient adult types. Maybe they're not all sentient, I don't know. But the point is, the Women's March was massive. Millions of women marched. Millions of women marched behind these people. Now, I'll say this. They didn't know they were marching behind anti-Semites. And I can't necessarily fault them, though I think it's important to know who you're marching behind, because anyone at the time in 2017 could have looked up Linda Sarsour and Tamika Mallory and seen what they stood, and you could see what they stood for. But I get it. It's a bunch of people. They want to go out and wave signs, and just because they show up in the streets doesn't mean they support exactly what, the founders believe. At this point, however, this story from Vox is explicitly pointing out that they're aware of anti-Semitism. They just don't care. Wow. Look, some people have said to me, Tim, that's not fair to point this out because they clearly don't support the anti-Semitism. They're there for other reasons. And I said, listen, when you show up to this event and there is a podium with an individual speaking over a megaphone to all of these people, you are empowering them. You are giving them press. You are giving them more power to do their thing. They've raised money for this. They'll continue to raise money for this. You are providing for their career, and they believe insane conspiracy theories about Jewish people that, I'm going to say it just to reiterate, ludicrous, insane conspiracy theories, okay? And so why would these women not care about that? Well, I can only say one thing. If you want to claim that you oppose anti-Semitism, if you want to claim that you oppose racism, but you show up anyway and empower overt and powerful anti-Semites, yeah, I'm just going to have to assume that you support it. It's really funny how I do an interview with some alt-right people, actually pushing back and arguing with them. And they say, look, Tim was sitting next to these guys at a bar drinking water. That proves it. And then what do? They say, but they go and march behind overt anti-Semites who they know are anti-Semitic, and they're like, oh, but it's different when we do it. Yeah, you're all insane. This is crazy. I'm losing my patience for the most part simply because with the MAGA kids incident, with this, I'm just like, wow, it's really funny how the Women's March people are marching behind anti-Semites. There's no mob. There's no calls for expulsion. There's no calls for firing. They're literally standing behind conspiracy theorist wingnuts. Nobody cares. The MAGA kids incident, however, they're calling for doxing, threats of violence against these kids. And someone made a really good point. They said, Tim, it's because the people in the Women's March are the ones leading the mob against the kids. And it's like, oh, I guess that's true. I've been thinking about this for a while. And one of the reasons, there's a lot of reasons I'm losing my patience for this, because they just lie nonstop. I mean, look what Vox wrote. White students in MAGA gear crashed the Indigenous Peoples March and harassed participants. Totally fake, total lies. But don't worry, I'll have the bigger report on it later. But the point is, they're lying like crazy. Most of us know they're lying like crazy. There's nothing you can do to stop them from lying like crazy. So what do you do? They openly stand behind people they claim to oppose and then criticize kids who didn't do anything. They're leading a mob against kids. They produce content, they produce commercials. They constantly just attack, but have no principles. This is why, I realize, and if you've watched my videos, I say this all the time, there's no rules. None. You know what, let's take this opportunity to jump over to the other story and just, I don't want to just always talk about Cortez, but she really is Trump, the left-wing version of Trump. And I don't mean her and Trump are identical, I just mean that there's analogs between the two, especially as powerful figures. You may have said she was an interesting fluke, okay? And that's what some people have said about her, that she won an accident, she exploited the system, that's fine. The point is, she has more followers now than Nancy Pelosi, than Elizabeth Warren. She is going to be the future of the Democrats. And she has no problem showing up to an anti-Semitic-led march. That says something about who she is. She was questioned about it. Good reporter asked her a simple question. You're here amid anti-Semitism controversy. She deflected. She said, oh, we'd talk about what Trump is doing. And it's like, listen, we get it. We know what Trump is doing. Answer the goddamn question. Why are you backing these people? Why are you on this stage? Why would you share a stage with anti-Semites? Answer the question. They won't, because they don't care, because they actually are anti-Semites themselves. Listen, I'll be the first to criticize the actions of Israel in the West Bank, the bulldozing of Palestinian homes, the extreme measures that we see, it's not a perfect situation. It's war and conflict. And people on the left just tend to side with whoever's the underdog. And thus, because Palestine is in a weak position compared to Israel, dramatically weaker position, Israel gets the brunt of their ire, right? So they don't care about Israel. And thus, you actually see politicians who will, I mean, what did Ilhan Omar say? That Israel hypnotizes the world and she stands by it. So what do you think, right? Anyway, yeah, I gotta admit, I'm really aching to do this video about the MAGA kids thing because it's just one of the scariest things I've ever seen. But we're gonna build up to it. I'm hoping that in the next few hours I can get an interview with one of these kids to have ready for 4 p.m. Because the issue is how fake news runs wild, how people don't care about facts. So anyway, stick around. I'll have that another video up at 1 p.m. perhaps, but 4 p.m. will be the MAGA kids story. I'll see you then.